Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is a very fast-paced, speed-running Void Knight that's going to be based around doing tons of damage with Mana Cleave. Now, Mana Cleave is going to have a cooldown on it, but we've got the cooldown reduced, and we have an extra charge thanks to the boots that we're wearing. The boots also give us extra move speed based on every point of Void damage we have. For items, there's going to be several different weapons that you could use. You could use Apothi's Maul for a ton of free Void damage. You can also, at higher levels, wear the Hollow Sword, and with it, you can try and get a tier 5 or higher affix of Void damage. I'm using the Hollow Sword that I got a while back on stream that has tier 7 Void damage on it. So while it may not be the perfect stats elsewhere on it, it's enough for us to do a ton of Void damage and have a ton of movement speed with it. This build will also revolve around having Sigils of Hope that will mostly proc when you kill enemies, and that's going to give you extra flat void damage. And then on top of that, we'll have Lunge, so we're moving even quicker. And then we'll also have Devouring Orb going off every 4 seconds to give us some extra increased speed, some more movement speed. And then on top of that, it will also give us a little bit of void resist, so we'll actually cap out our void resist with it. That's going to allow us to open up some free suffixes so that we can stack even more health. We'll have a ton of leech, which will ultimately give us a huge EHP pull so that we won't be able to die very easily. We're also going to have a lot of damage mitigation between armor and just being super tanky as a Sentinel class. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the skills, the interactions, and just how it all works. For skills, I'm running Void Cleave, Anomaly, Sigils of Hope, Lunge, and Devouring Orb. For Void Cleave, we have this setup to do as much void damage as possible and to have a very high critical strike chance, as well as do more damage against high health mobs. So we have 2 points at Into the Depths for increased area and damage, 1 point into Abyssal Walker for increased travel distance, as it is a movement skill as well, plus another 10% more damage, 1 point into Precognition so it cannot be dodged. This also increases the base crit chance. 4 points in Deadly Omen. This creates 100% more damage against high health mobs or anything that's above 75% health. Then we have 5 points in Crushing Echo, which gives us 75 flat added void damage with the skill, which is huge. It's also tripled for Echoes, so when you have Void Cleave and you use it and the skill echoes, the Echo actually gets 225 flat void damage, which is absolutely huge, and that's why your shadow is going to hit for 2 to 3 times more damage than you. On top of that, you can get increased shadow damage in the passive trees inside of your gear, which is just crazy for it, and it's going to do a lot more damage than you, and those are where the really big hits come in. We also have 3 points in Rift Maker, so that you apply critical vulnerability on your hits. You're going to apply 3 stacks of that, and you have 150% increased critical strike chance. Now, why that's effective, even though you're not spamming this skill, is because when you apply those, if you somehow do not crit, or if you don't have 100% crit, your shadow is going to come in behind you and have a much higher chance to then crit and do the really big damage. And then we have 4 points in Champion of the Void for 200% critical strike multiplier, and we'll gain back 4 mana if we do a critical strike with it, which is always really nice. Now, 4 mana is basically nothing compared to the 17 mana cost. However, it's still something, so it helps offset it just a little. For Anomaly, we have this set up for Time Bubble so that we can get our benefits of crit chance, some attack speed, which we're not too worried about. It's the cooldown reduction we're really after, and we'll get a little bit of leech. We got 1 point in Void Touched, 1 point in Time Bubble, 5 points in Decimation, 5 points in Temporal Mastery, 1 point in Lingering Memory, 1 point in Time Lord. So the Time Bubble will move with us, and it will stay up for almost the entire time, and the moment that it disappears, you get the buffs, but you'll also be recasting it at the same time. So you get 100% uptime of all the buffs. And that 5 points in Decimation gives you that 150% increased critical strike chance, which will really boost your chance to do a critical strike. Got 1 point in Manipulation. We don't care too much about the attack and cast speed, but that point does unlock the Swift Rest, which gives us 30% cooldown recovery, which is global, which will help reduce the cost of Void Cleave, or not reduce the cost, but reduce the cooldown of it so that you can spam it more often. And then 2 points in Time Meter for some health leech, which will be doubled for all the void damage we do, which is basically everything. We got Sigils of Hope for some added damage. We got 5 points in Empowering Sigils, 1 point in Last Wish, 3 points in Decree of Flame, 1 point in Sigils of Despair, 4 points in Iron Sigils, 5 points in Enduring Hope, and 1 point in Tetragram. This is so we can have 4 of them. Each one's going to give us 7 flat added void damage and 15% increased void damage, which is really big for the build. It'll also give us a bunch of armor, which will be really nice for the defense. For Lunge, we have this set up to actually do pretty good damage. It'll actually crit level 100 mobs for about 6,000 damage, 5 to 6,000 damage, which is pretty good for Lunge. It's really nice for clearing things out. We also have it converted to Void for us. So we've got 3 points in Warrior's Renewal, 5 points in Ambuscade, so that it does more melee damage to high health mobs, 150% more. 2 points in Endless Will, 3 points in Initiate's Onslaught for 150% more damage, maximum damage depending on how far you travel, and it will do it in a larger area. 3 points in Cool of the Week to have a 15% kill threshold, which is nice against bosses that you can actually lunge at. Don't look at Lagon. 2 points in Reckless Skirmish, 1 point in Void Bringer, so that all damage is converted to Void, and all bleed chance is converted to Time Rot chance, and then 1 point if you kill an enemy with Lunge, which we actually do quite a bit, especially trash mobs. You will actually reset the cooldown on Void Cleave, which is really nice and allows you to spam it more. Now, if you use Lunge on autocast and you're constantly resetting the cooldown on Void Cleave and using Void Cleave a lot, you will run into mana issues, as those two together can start costing quite a bit of mana. So you have to be a little bit careful with it, but it is nice to use, and it will give you some extra cooldown resets. And then for Devouring Orb, we're using this for move speed, increased damage, and also to cap out our Void Resist. We got 6 points in Void Adept, 5 points in Abyssal Juggernaut, 1 point in Dark Moon, 2 points in Abyssal Rush for that 20% increased move speed, 1 point in Cosmic Impact, and 5 points in Sightless Aura to have as much cast speed and reduce the mana cost as much as possible. We will leave it on autocast. It'll go off every 4 seconds just so we don't have to think about it. However, you could just cast it once every 10 seconds, but you got to make sure that you stay on top of that, as it is where you get all of your void resistance. For passives, I've got 20 points in the base Sentinel class, with 2 points in Overwhelm, 8 points in Juggernaut, 5 points in Armor Clad, and 5 points in Valiant Charge. We got 15 points in the Paladin to unlock the Sigils of Hope, with 8 points in Defiance, 2 points in Valor, and 5 points in Blinding Light. This also gives us some nice endurance. And then 77 points in the Void Knight, with 2 points in Abyssal Endurance, 6 points in Temporal Corruption, 6 points in World Eater, 8 points in Void Blades, 1 point in Void Corruption, 2 points in Rot Ripples, 7 points in Woe, 4 points in Singular Purpose, 5 points in Echoing Strikes, 10 points in Eternal Form, 15 points in Dread, 10 points in Time Legion, and 1 point in Avatar of Regret. For the build planner, for your gear, your idols, your uniques, and your blessings. For the idols, there's a few different ones you can use. You can fit in some 1x4s that have increased echo damage when a skill is echo. That's going to make your echoes do a ton more damage. You can also get increased melee void damage, which is really powerful. On the 1x3s, you can also get increased melee void damage, which is really nice. For the 1x1s and 1x2s, you're basically filling in any resistance that you might not have from elsewhere, which will really help you kind of fill in those gaps that you might have missed that you weren't able to get on gear. There is one unique required, or I won't say required, but it's highly encouraged to get it, as it is what this build is mostly based around, and that is the Darkstride. This gives you increased movement speed. It's going to give you a +1 charge to Void Cleave, which is really nice since when Lunge kills enemies, it'll reset that and give you the cooldowns back. And this also gives you flat added melee void damage, increased void damage, which is going to give you tons of extra damage. It'll also give you 0.2% increased movement speed per added melee void damage. Between what you can get from the sword I'm wearing or from wearing Apothi's Axe, it's going to give you 30-40% extra move speed, which is really, really nice, and it's going to help you move a lot quicker, and that's why our character is flying through the echoes. For the rest of the gear, like I said, for the weapon, I have a tier 7 melee void damage on a hollow blade, basically like the best you can get. The rules aren't the best, but it's still really good. This is better than Apothi's Maul. Apothi's Maul is almost as good as this, so definitely don't rule out using that axe. If you don't have a tier 6 or tier 7 decently ruled hollow blade, you only can get up to like tier 5, I'd recommend almost going with Apothi's Maul, although you won't be able to add in the melee critical strike chance. So even tier 5 melee critical strike chance and tier 5 melee void damage is going to end up being a better axe just at tier 10 than Apothi's Maul just for the critical strike chance. You'll have to play back and forth with those two. They're going to be pretty equal, but overall I like the hollow blade a little bit more. But if you don't even have a hollow blade, or you don't have one that has, you know, above tier 4, tier 5 rolls, feel free to throw on a Apothi's Maul and just use that two-handed axe until you can craft something better. For everything else, you're basically going for void damage, increased critical strike chance, increased shadow damage, lots of health, cap out your resistances, make sure to get your endurance and your critical strike avoidance, and that'll be about it. For the blessings, nothing makes or breaks this build, so I'm just going to hover over them. This is what my character has. Again, nothing makes or breaks this build, so get whatever blessings you think would help you, whether it's offense or defense that you're looking for. For the character sheet, as you can see, we have almost 2,800 health on this character. It is my level 100 Void Knight. We are almost capped on all resist. Our Void, again, when we do Devouring Orb, is going to cap that out. So we're only shy a little bit on fire. Got about 30% armor. That will go up as our Sigils of Hope come out. And then for our damage types, we got about 400% void damage just sitting here. But again, that will go up when you have Devouring Orb active. You'll have Sigils active, which will give you some increased overall. You'll be sitting a little bit higher. And then our critical strike multiplier sitting at 277, but that's even a little bit higher considering that we have 200% critical strike multiplier inside of the Void Cleave skill itself, which is really nice. And then for defense, we are capped on critical strike avoidance and almost capped on endurance. For the skill rotation and how I would play the build, I put Anomaly on autocast. I also put Devouring Orb on autocast. I don't really cast Sigils as I'm going to be using most of my mana between Void Cleave and Lunge. So Sigils of Hope is something that if you're going up against bosses, you would manually do, or if you're just doing echo clearing or arenas, just let them proc with the 6% chance that they have on kill. And then all you're going to do around really is you're just going to lunge into different enemies and then just Void Cleave away. And you'll see that when you Void Cleave, whenever you hit an enemy, you're going to, we did 200,000 damage there. But your Echo is actually going to do quite a bit more damage if we can get one. There you go. 500,000 damage with an Echo, which is absolutely insane damage. So even though my tooltip is only saying 82,000, we're actually doing 200k crits. And then on top of that, our shadows, or our, not shadows, sorry, our echoes will be doing 2 to 3 times that amount of damage. Ours is hitting for about 500,000, which hits really, really hard. And again, you have those extra charges, which allows you to spam it if you really need. And then if you get a kill with Lunge, it would reset it. But we only have a 2.2 second cooldown with this. Anomaly is really reducing that a bunch for us. If we have our Sigils of Hope active, we'll even hit just a little bit harder, as we'll have some more added void damage. But overall, it's a very hard-hitting skill, and it's really nice because you can literally just lunge, and then you can keep moving forward with your Void Cleave as it's a movement skill. It's not as quick, but at least it's a little bit forward, and then lunge onto the next enemy. The more mana regen that you end up building into, the more you'll be able to just keep spamming both of those and go through echoes really, really quick. Alright, for the leveling of this character, this is something that you can level with starting from level 1. You can get Void Cleave relatively early and use it all the way through to the end game to build this guide up. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It hits hard. You can mix it in with a little bit of Rive or Vengeance or Warpath early on, just kind of mix between the skills, as it's not going to have, as short a cooldown or hit as hard until you get some points put into it. It really comes together once you get Apothi's Maul Axe or once you get the Hollow Blade for all that extra added void damage. But it is something that you can level up with, and it is something that you don't have to transition to later. However, I will link a 1 to 75 guide for the Void Knight in case you want to have something to go off of and then transition to this later. Either way, super easy build. All you have to do is put the passives in where they're in. I would go into the Paladin tree before going into the Void Knight tree just to be able to get that Sigils of Hope, as it will add in some damage. But either way you decide to do it, not a big deal. And then once you hit the high level 70s, as soon as you can get the Hollow Blade on, or once you put on Apothi's Maul, it's going to really come together there at the end game. Alright, that's going to be it for this build guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, stay safe and enjoy some gameplay.
Annihilation. Destruction. Annihilation. Annihilation. This means nothing. The end will come all the same.